Most speakers, they're so full of themselves that I look at them and say, really?
Most popular leadership expert in the world.
The world's leading leadership coach.
3 of his books sold over 1 million copies.
One of the greatest communicators who's ever lived.
John Maxwell in the house.
John Maxwell.
John Maxwell here today.
I can listen to anybody speaking, and in 2 minutes, I can tell you how much of their ego is involved in their talk, how much they're trying to impress people. It isn't about you. Isn't supposed to be about you. I don't know why in the heck we ever thought it was about you. Do I want fans or do I want friends? If you really want to be a great communicator, you have to.
Well, welcome back to the Think Media Podcast. I'm fired up because we're talking about the 16 undeniable laws of communication, and honored to have John Maxwell here today. But John, what is one of the most common communication mistakes that, if fixed, would improve my next video or my next presentation?
I love that question because I'm asked that question a lot. And I have an answer that really will help the people that are hanging with us today. And it's so simple and it's so hard. You know, some of the things that are very simple to understand are hard to implement. But I promise you, if you implement it and do this, it's just going to work. The number one thing, when somebody says, I want to be a great communicator, I want to really grow in my communication, I say, well, if you really want to be a great communicator, you have to get over yourself. You have to get over yourself. It isn't about you. Isn't supposed to be about you. I don't know why in the heck we ever thought it was about you. It's not about me. I was getting ready to speak to about 5,000 people a few years ago, and I was in the green room. And there were 2 or 3 other speakers. It was like a speaker program, I guess. And so one of them came up to me, and I was maybe 5 minutes away from going out. He said, what are you thinking about right now? I said, well, I'm thinking about the people. He said, I thought you'd be thinking about what you're going to talk about. No, I said, I'm thinking about the people. And what I'm thinking about is, how do I connect with them? How do I walk out on that stage and in the first 30 seconds to a minute, have them know that I care for them and that I'm there to serve them, to add value to them. And the success of our day is going to be about when they're done. I want them to walk out of that building and I want them to say, not John Maxwell's amazing. I want them to say, I'm amazing. I can do this. I feel empowered. I feel equipped. And so it's about the people. So when we did on the 16 Laws book on communication, Sean, when we did it, I insisted that the media people start the video with me being in the audience. I said, I want to be in a seat where the people sit, because all communication doesn't start on the stage at all. It starts in the audience. I have to look at that person in that seat. And I got to ask myself one question. What do they need? What are they looking for? How can I help them? I got to figure it out. I got to figure it out as quickly as I possibly can. So one of the things, for example, with practical stuff I do is when I walk into auditoriums, I sit down with the people that are going to do sound and lights. And I say, when I speak, I want the lights up. I want the lights way up. I want to see the people's faces. I want to be able to look at them. I want to be able to watch them visually so I can know where they are. And of course, really, honestly, stage people don't like that. They want to darken everything. See, they want the focus on me. They want the lights all on me. And I tell them now they have to have good lights on the speaker so you can see them visually. We're not going there. But it isn't about me. It's about the audience. You see, you take the lights off of the audience, guess what they do? They become passive. Now they think they're in a movie, or they're going to go hear some comedian talk, or they're now with the lights off the people and the lights on me, it's on me. But the lights on the people, now we're back to them. Now we can interact. Now we can respond. We can go back and forth. So you have to get over yourself. And in the beginning, I want to encourage all you people. When in the beginning, I had to work on that. In fact, I'll tell you how bad I was. I got out of college, and first of all, with all my speaking, hermeneutics classes, homiletics, all my classes, they taught me never use a personal illustration, and they taught me to make sure that you have the right posture. They just tried to fix me, kind of present me, I don't know, good, whatever that means. And I would go in, because I started off as a pastor, And I would go into the pulpit with a Greek New Testament. Now, I'm in southern Indiana talking to a bunch of farmers who basically just finished milking cows and put on their best clothes they got and came to church. I'm reading out the Greek, and I wore glasses because I thought glasses made me look more intellectual. I'm talking about stupid stuff, real stupid stuff. You know why? Because I thought it was about me. There's nothing about me when I speak. It's about the people, period. There is no other story to tell. And people can tell. I can listen to anybody speaking, and in 2 minutes, I can tell you how much of their ego is involved in their talk, how much they're trying to impress people versus how much they're wanting to identify with the people. And you got to identify with where the people are. If there's a gap, because I have a problem. I have a problem that every successful person has. People think that I'm better than I am. They think I'm smarter than I am. They put me on this pedestal. I got to get off of the pedestal. The pedestal doesn't do one thing for me. It just makes, okay, one more quick thing. Do I want fans or do I want friends? If I want fans, I'll make this gap as wide as I possibly can. I'll get up on that pedestal and it'll be all about me and you're down there and aren't you lucky to hear me? And my gosh, you may never hear me again. I may never see you. If I want friends, I got to close that gap. I got to get where they are. And they got to know more than anything else. Not that John writes books, not that John is a communicator. They got to know I'm the friend. Just want to help them. What can I do to help you? That's why I sit when I talk, because I want to be conversational. I want to have in fact, I don't want my people in front of me, although they are in front of me, because that's the way logistically auditoriums are. What I really want them to be, Sean, is I want them to be beside me. And I want them to be beside me so that as we take our journey together, as I talk, I can just share with them, oh, wow, did you see that? What's it? Let's stop for a moment. Let's talk about that. It's a spirit, it's an attitude, it's an identity. And when I'm done, I want them to walk out of that facility and I just want them to say, hey, he helped me today. That's success. And if I didn't help them, then why did I show up? And more important, why did they show up? And then most of the times, why do they pay that kind of money to hear somebody that didn't help them? So I hope I'm communicating it well to you, because Sean, most speakers, they're so full of themselves that I look at them and say, really? Really, you're just so amazing. Why don't you just stand alone in a room and just parade around? I don't know what you do. It's not about me. It's about the people, and they know.
Well, John, this is so inspirational, but it's also challenging. And, our community on this podcast is content creators, entrepreneurs and speakers and coaches, but people that are in this world of, we've all heard the term now, influencer. And this is so countercultural because this idea of being an influencer is it's about me, and it's about me getting views. It's about me getting a following. And so if this light bulb moment is going off for listeners, like, wow, I really want to put the audience first. I want to put the viewers first and get into this posture, not of selfishness, but of service. What would you recommend for practically developing that character and that mindset so that we stay in touch and stay connected and don't let our ego get out of control?
One of the things, when you write and you have a 50-year career like I have, there's a whole bunch of things you wrote in the beginning that you think, whoa, I wish I would have written that, because I've learned. I know better now. You know what I'm saying? I gave them my best, but boy, my best wasn't really that good when I look back at it. And one of the first things I came out teaching was the fact that leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, let me give you the context. I taught that, Sean, because when I started teaching leadership 50 years ago, people thought it was position and title. In fact, I would say I'm going to do a leadership conference and nobody would have come because they said, I'm already a leader. Why would I come to a leadership conference? They thought leadership was a noun, not a verb. So they thought it was a title, it was a position, it was a place. And of course it's not, it's influence. So when I said leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, this was before social media. And I was just trying to help people know that the person in the room with the most influence in that room is truly the leader of the pack, whether they have the title or position or whatever. Today with social media, it's gotten completely twisted. And there are times, honestly, I say, I wish I would have never taught leadership as influence. Nothing more, nothing less, because there's a difference between influence on social media and how many people are clicking in and following and how many likes you got and all this stuff. That's not leadership at all. That's being famous for a moment. Now we're trying to grab the attention of somebody so that we can say this, hey, just because they checked into you doesn't mean that they're following you as far as a leader is concerned. In fact, if you want to know if you're really that good, ask them for money. The moment you ask for any kind of commitment, you're going to find out how many people are following you and how many people are just in love with something you just did that kind of, oh my gosh, did you see this? So popularity or the stuff that is in social media, that isn't the influence I'm talking about. You never know. Here's what I know. You never know the degree of your leadership influence until you ask for commitment. Only commitment shows if they are true followers of your leadership. You don't have any commitment in social media at all. So just because you had 1 million likes or whatever it is, that doesn't mean that those people are really following you. They just caught you for a moment and said, oh, that was interesting. And then they moved on to somewhere else. So, I said something and started something 50 years ago that now I'm trying to have to explain. And I think there's probably, in the context of when I taught it, it was very essential. Today, it's misunderstood because of the social media.
Speaking about the culture we're in today, why do communication skills matter with the specific challenges? And I'm curious, as you mentioned, you have this career, you've been through many different forms of media. And right now we're seeing 2.7 billion monthly active users on YouTube. This thing called the creator economy has become a real job. It's become a real career for people. And it's estimated there's 200 million content creators. Brands are spreading their message across these platforms. We're also in an election year and we're seeing all kinds of vitriol online. With this moment we're living in right now, why does communication matter and why is it important for the different walks of lives listeners could be in right now?
If a person came to me and said, John, if there's a skill I can develop to really help me be to have success in my life, what skill would you encourage me to develop? I would say you need to develop your communication skills. And the reason for that is very simple. It's through the act of communication that we persuade people. You remove that. What I've always said is leadership is very visual. People do what people see. And so, it's the Warren Buffetts who, when you say Warren Buffett, you think of money. You say John Maxwell, you think of leadership. But what does Warren Buffett say? The most important skill you can ever develop is communication. Because what do we have to do? We have to cast vision continually. We have to constantly lead through our communication. So the communication that I'm talking about is communication that helps people get better. If I, on social media, talk about who I am and what I've done, it could even maybe be entertaining. Maybe it's even funny. But when it's all said and done, did I really improve their life? Or did I just give them a moment of splurge entertainment, which nothing wrong with that, but they're not following you. Those people are here today and they're gone tomorrow. But real leaders know that we have to communicate with our example. We have to communicate with our words. In fact, our words and our example have to match. And when what I say and what I do isn't the same thing, I lose credibility, I lose trust. And so when you talk about social media, when you talk about sound bites, when you're talking about they look best under this kind of light and all that, can I tell you something? Nobody lives that life. When are we going to realize, hey, nobody lives that life? If nobody lives that life, why are we so sucked into it? Nobody lives that life. There's no credibility. There's no integrity, no authenticity. Now, do I think we should be the best we possibly should be? Absolutely. Do I think we ought to constantly grow and improve? Absolutely. Do I think we ought to learn better ways to communicate? Yeah, absolutely. All of that we're wanting to have. But it's for the reason of helping other people. Somebody said, John, the other day, they said to me, John, I know why you're successful. I said, well, tell me why I'm successful. They said, you're very successful helping people be very successful. Okay, I'll buy that. If I'm doing that, I want that. I want that. But I don't want to be very successful because people know me or like me, or I've got to live beyond something. We have to have gravitas and substance in our life. And what this world reminds me of more than anything else is a world that lacks total substance and would sell their soul for a moment of fame. It's very sad. That's not the communication we're talking about. We're talking about communication that equips people, empowers people, believes in people. It's that kind of communication. In fact, can I do one more thing on the book, Sean? I'm sorry. In the book, I talk about your best picture and your big picture. And your best picture or your best message is the message you're teaching right now, but your big message is how you see the people. And there are 4 questions in the book I talk about in communicating to people. There are 4 questions I have to ask myself with the big message. And the first question is what do I want the people to see? The second question is, what do I want the people to know? The third question is, what do I want the people to feel? And the fourth question is, what do I want the people to do? It's all about the people. It's not about me. I didn't ask, what do I want to see? What I want them to see. What I want them to see is their possibilities. I want to lift the ceiling for people because too many people, they enclose themselves in and are much smaller than they need to be. What do I want them to know? I want them to know that I value them. I want them to know everything I'm teaching, I value them. What do I want them? What do I want them to, what do I want them to feel? I want them to feel empowered. I want them to feel that they can do what I say. And what do I want them to do? I want them to apply. I want them to apply it to their life. I want them to multiply it through others. I think when you communicate with that picture, you're going to communicate to the top ability that you have of really serving the people well. And so I love having kind of like, this is the picture of what I want, so that when you communicate, you're constantly putting your DNA through that grid that hopefully works.
You just gave a framework that I think every one of us, if we're going to create a piece of content or a YouTube video, could ask 4 questions. What do I want the viewers to see the possibilities? What do I want them to know and learn? What do I want them to feel? That's probably a missing piece there because of thinking about not just information, but connection, the emotions, maybe even how I want to show up on camera. And then what do I want them to do? So there's a call to action, there's a practical, and that could even be true in a business sense. What do I want them to do next so they can go to a deeper level of transformation? Before my next question, and I want to dive into some specific laws from the book, but on the feel question, is there anything you do that as content creators, maybe before we press record on the camera, before we step on stage, to get into the right mindset so we're not just on the logical side, but that we do tap into that emotional side? You may have touched on this because you said, I want to start in the audience. But yeah, how could we get there so we show up maybe in the right calm or the right state, the right mental place, and that we convey, again, not just information, but that emotions that connect with people?
It's such a great question, Sean. And I do go through a process. And the process is very simple, so all the people that are with us today can grab hold of it. And that is, in asking what I want the people to feel, I go back to when I was in the audience. And I ask myself, who helped me? And how did they help me? And what I discovered was 2 things when I would sit in the audience. First of all, the person that helped me the most was the person who wanted to help me the most. That was huge. And I could tell that everything they did and said was to add value to me and to help me. So I get in this mindset, my whole goal is to help the Seans in the audience. Who are they? How can I help them? So it starts with that. But then I go back and I say, it is not what they said as much as how they said it. There's a way to teach and communicate that, again, puts them beside you as a friend. And there's another way to communicate which puts them in front of you where you become superior. So, for example, I never ask a question when I speak that people don't already know the answer. I mean, I would never speak and say, how many miles is the moon from the earth? Now, honestly, I don't know how many miles. It's a long way. Okay. Well, but who gives a rip? Really, who cares? Now, why would I ask how many miles is it from the Earth to the moon? For only one reason. I know the answer and you don't. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you in a moment how smart I am and how I know something you don't know.
Question. Are you interested in learning the best strategies that are working right now to get views and subscribers on YouTube? Well, I want to invite you to our free 5-day Tube 1K challenge, where I'm going to be going through our 7-step YouTube success system entirely for free. Over 10,000 people have used this exact framework to start and grow successful YouTube channels, whether for their business, whether as a side hustle or as a creator, or even as a ministry and a nonprofit. And I'm going to be teaching through these 7 steps at tube1kchallenge.com. Every one of the 5 challenge sessions will include a strategy that you can immediately apply to start growing your channel, as well as a challenge, something to do that'll get you moving, taking action, and creating content that will lead to growth. Plus, there's going to be software giveaways, tech giveaways, and even a brand new YouTube camera. So if you're interested, just go to tube1kchallenge.com or click the link in the show notes. And now let's get back into the episode.
I remember last year, I took some of my friends to Normandy, and we had a few day D-Day experience kind of thing there. And we had guides. We had some guides. And it was one of the guides, he would start telling the experience of Normandy. And then he'd ask a question. Do you know how many soldiers came in on the Omaha beach that day? Well, heck no. None of us know. It's our fish trip there. And of course, we don't know. And he'd say, all right, there were 6,332 soldiers. He took 3 minutes to teach. He'd say, do you know what time it was that day when basically the battle was won or lost? No, we don't know. He'd tell us. What I did is I watched my group. I had about 50 of us. I slowly backed out to close enough. I'm 5 feet from him, but I wanted to get behind him. And after the third question, every time he asked the question, everybody in that room bowed their head. They did what I did when I was in school. When the teacher asked a question, I didn't know the answer. I didn't look at her. If I knew the answer, I'm looking at her. I'm raising my hand. Here we go. Here, I got this one. Please, hey, you're not going to ask anything else I'm going to know all day. So please let me have my shot. They bowed their head. He was isolating, separating the people from him. This is what I'm talking about right here. So what he was making, what he made him feel is he made him feel inferior all day long, so that he could make himself feel superior. You can't win, and I can't win. I got to determine who's going to win and who's not going to win. Your win is going to be my win. But if you don't get a win, it's not a win for me. So you have to win first. It's not like win-win. I hear people say, I win, you win. No, it's you win, I win. And if you don't win, I don't win. And it's that mindset that when you go in and you talk to people, you're either talking about them or down to them, or you're talking with them and having a conversation. And if possible, they'd have microphones where they could keep interacting with you during the time. So yes, those two things, when I go in to get the feeling of the people, I put myself in the seat where I used to go and say, man, I hope I can learn something today. I really need some of this. That they know things I know. I got to learn. So I think it's that spirit and attitude as you go in that makes sense to really connect with them.
It's so powerful. And I want to break down and ask some questions about a couple of the laws in here. And if you're listening to this and you haven't picked up the 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication, this is one of our favorite books at the Think Media Podcast. I think it's an essential book in everyone's library that's a content creator and that it communicates a message of any time. And it's kind of underrated because you wouldn't really think that it would in the YouTube world, because it's not one of those it doesn't appear to be a YouTube book, but it actually is almost like a Bible for content creators with these principles. And one of the laws is the law of content that states when you have something to say, people will listen. Break this down of what this law means, but you touched on this earlier. We're living in a world where there's so much information, but it seems like we're starving for wisdom. What's the law of content, and how could we apply that to make the next thing we create better? Well,
content is more than just doing research and you're speaking on, said maybe I'm speaking on health, so I'm putting together a lesson on health. It's more than having information for the people. Information is something you give to people, but what you're really wanting is transformation. And information goes to the head, transformation goes to the heart. And so the communication we're talking about in the law of content, one of the things I teach is you cannot give what you do not have. So the best teaching, Sean, that I give is out of my life. It's not about me, but it's about my experiences that connect with where the people are. What makes stories work is when you tell a story, everybody goes into their story. Because, oh my gosh, I remember when something like that happened to me. So there's a connection. So the content that we're talking about, to me, I can remember so well. I was probably only 26. I was still in my 20s for sure. And I came to the conclusion that I was only going to teach what I truly believed and had experienced. That I just wasn't going to teach it. If it's something I had been taught, why would I teach it to someone else until I practiced it? Because wisdom isn't coming through information. Wisdom comes through experience. And wisdom specifically comes, Sean, through evaluated experience. My ability to take an experience and then evaluate it and say, what did I learn from that? If experience were the best teacher, which it's not, we hear that, oh, well, experience best teacher. I thought, really? If experience were the best teacher, Sean, everybody as they got older would get better. Everybody would, 100%. Because as you get older, you have more experiences. But everybody that's getting older, they're not getting better at all. In fact, a lot of them are getting worse. Experience is not the best teacher. Evaluated experience is the best teacher. My willingness to reflect and say, okay, what did I learn from that? When my children were growing up, I would ask them 2 questions. We would have experiences, not daily, but 3 or 4 times a week, we'd have some kind of experience. Maybe no big deal, but it's just a little experience, but experience. And I'd ask them 2 questions. What did you love? What did you learn? By the time they were 8, every experience they come, now, Dad, here's what we loved, here's what we loved. I'm not having to ask the question anymore because I'm now teaching them every experience has to be framed into evaluating and reflecting what did I get out of that? Because the experience itself doesn't carry enough gravitas to change your life. Evaluating it does. And I did the same thing with my grandchildren when we were talking earlier, and you've got I think a 2-year-old and maybe a 4-year-old. You know what I mean? I promise you, especially with the 4-year-old, you start asking the question. If I ask my kids that question while they grew up, once I asked them 10,000 times, what'd you love? They just knew. We had nothing, no experience without, well, what did you love? What did you learn? And that is so essential, I think, in connecting and communicating with people. And if we, and that comes through so what I teach out of my life. It's what I call layered learning. I learn a little bit here, but later on you learn about the same subject, but a little different perspective, and you just start building until you have, wisdom comes out of layered learning. Wisdom comes out of evaluating your experiences and applying the principles to your life. That's where wisdom is extracted from that. So when I teach, the more I can give them out of those experiences, the more wisdom I dispense to them, which allows them to very quickly grow to that area. In wisdom, it's kind of like information you write down on paper. Wisdom you write down on your heart. It's kind of like, I can't let that go. Yeah, I maybe wrote it on paper, but it's in the heart. This is where the change is coming. So in content, I just made a decision in my 20s that I'm going to live it, practice it, and then teach it. And that meant I didn't teach a lot when I was young because I had a lot to learn first before I taught. But then when I taught out of my learning, it was really life-changing. When I read a book, I want to read a book from somebody that's been successful in that world. And you know, my wonderful friend Tracy Morrow's with me today in the studio. She lives here in Colorado Springs, where I happen to be today. And so she came over, and you know, she wrote a book about marriage. She's got a great marriage, and she gave 100 examples in that book of how to make it work. Okay, that's wisdom. That's evaluated experience gone right that you can apply to your life. So in content, I want more than information, that's for sure.
I love that. One of the other laws is the law of storytelling. And when we started, you talked about, it's not about me, it's about them. So for listeners, they might think, okay, well, then if I start telling a story about me, though, how can I tie them in? And that's really what the law is. It says people see their own lives in our stories. So touching on this other law, do you have any kind of framework we can use so that while keeping the audience front and center and ensuring that connection, yet tapping into the wisdom and the lived experience so our content is more powerful with the stories that we inject? How do you find stories from your own life that illustrate principles and then tell them in such a way that they don't go too long or too much detail or too boring or just completely lose the audience and still make the listener the hero?
Well, I love that question. You know, I speak a lot internationally, and when I spoke internationally in the beginning, I really wasn't good at all. In fact, I was really poor. In fact, a funny story. One of my first international gigs was many, many years ago when our daughter Elizabeth, she was about 6 or 7. So this would be, my gosh, this would be 40 years ago. So I'm in Japan with a translator, and I'm trying to teach, and Margaret is with our daughter Elizabeth. And I've not been teaching long. I'm 15, 20 minutes into it. My daughter Elizabeth looks at Margaret and says, "Dad isn't very good over here, is he?" and I wasn't, because now I'm in a different culture. Now watch how this translates. So when I'm international, which I was 2 weeks ago, I was in Asia, then next week I was in Mexico. So I'm international a lot. When I get ready to tell a story, I'll ask people, like maybe I'm going to tell a story on giving an allowance to my children. Chores, maybe it's this. I'll ask them, I'll just stop and say, now let me ask you a question. When kids do work in your house, do you pay them money or do you have an allowance? And in some cultures, they'll say yes, and so I'll tell the story. If they say no, I said, well, I'm not going to tell that story because there's nothing for them to relate to. Now, that is but when I learned to ask questions and not assume in a culture that wasn't mine, it made me a terrific. Now I'm a very effective international speaker, but I've learned to figure out what they know, because in communication and leadership, assumptions is the mother of all mess ups. If I assume you know something you don't know, and I go into teaching it, there's a disconnect immediately. I mean, you're already looking at your iPhone, your iPad, you're still in the room, but you're gone. And so I can't assume. So in telling stories, I make sure I tell stories that are very basic to life. Now, your audience never is your audience first. Your audience is your friends. You're out to dinner. So you tell the story. If it catches on around the table, it'll catch on in the arena. If it can catch on with 5, it'll catch on with 5,000. If it doesn't catch on with 5, it can't catch on with 5,000. So you throw them out. You find out the people. In fact, most of my books that I write, Sean, are from speaking. I remember I was in Dallas many, many years ago, and I was talking about failure, and I just made a statement. Really, we need to learn how to fail forward. And when I said the word fail forward, the audience went, ah. It was like an audible response. And I mentally check it off and say, that needs to be a title of a book, Failing Forward. So it's kind of like, try it in little groups. If it works with your friends around the table, then try it with people that you want to become your friends. And that really works. But assumption in leadership, you got to find you have to find your people before you can lead them. If you can't find them, you can't lead them. And I watch people starting to lead people and they've never found them yet. Or in communication, you got to find your audience before you can communicate to your audience. And you do that by asking questions, and the people will tell you. And now they feel like they are an active participant in your talk. It's the most amazing thing. They just now understand. So when people go highly scripted, I tell them, you either have to be awesome on foreknowledge, predestination, and understanding human nature. Because normally, if I script it the way I think that people want to hear it, it's not going to be near as effective as knowing where the people are and scripting it to what they are receptive to and what they're not going to have to assume over. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're staying in touch, and you need to be ready to pivot. If you go in fully scripted, then you might lose your audience along the way.
I want to stand up many times when people are scripting. I want you to stand up and say, I know you're doing this because you're media people and all those people want all that stuff. I just want you to know none of us out here care. And so could you quickly get done so that we could get on with our life? Yeah, and they just go on and on and on. You know, it's like long introductions. I tell people, if you're good, you don't need a long introduction. If you're good, when you get up, within a minute, they know if you're good or not. So, in fact, anymore, I'm saying I don't want the videos. I don't want any of that stuff anymore because they'll do these 2-minute hype things. And when I'm done, I'm a person of faith. It's kind of like God's coming into the room. This is going to be amazing. And I'm not that amazing. All they did is took my best script, my best sound bites and put it together. And everybody thought, oh, my, wonderful, wonderful. His name is John. He's your friend. Could I just go out and talk to the people now? Because if you're good, you don't need a big introduction. You're just good. And if you're not good, Sean, a big introduction won't help you. I hear some people and I say, that introduction was better than them. Could we just go back to the introduction? I'd like to see the runner. Do the video one more time. Take them off the stage. They're not any good. Just let me see the video. And I think this goes back to, why do we do this? We take ourselves too serious. I love it when young leaders, once in a while I'll do a round table and they'll come to our house. We'll have dinner with them. And they love going to my office and I just tell stories. My office is like a little museum and I tell them stories. And one of the questions young ones like, and it's a great question, is how do I brand? I need to really talk to me about branding. How do I brand myself? So you know what I do, Sean? I take them over to 3. Now we're talking about cassette tapes. I'm an old man. I mean, your young people are with us right now. They don't know what a cassette tape is, but I take them over to 3 vinyl packets, just vinyl, with a plastic, a stick-on, like a stick-on thing with the title of what the tapes were about, okay? And I pull those 3 out and I show that to them. They're as ugly as sin. I mean, you can't make ugly as bad as I made ugly. It's kind of like you would have to have a lot of thought in ugly to do what I did. And I look at, and I show them to them because they want no branding. I said, aren't these the ugliest things? Oh my, they're ugly. They're just, oh my gosh, terrible. And so I said, they're awful. I'm ashamed of them, but I'm very proud of them because they were my first shot. It was the first time I ever did it. I wasn't any good. They didn't look any good. They were ugly as sin. I said, oh, by the way, in 4 years, I sold 100,000 tapes. Why don't you practice getting good? If you'll get good, can I tell you something? Branding really will help you. But if you're not good, God nor branding can't bail you out. And I watch people, if I could just get myself positioned right. But no, you're not any good. God can't position you right. You're going to have to understand. You got to get good and then work on branding. It's like advertising. You hear the advertising, you go to the store and you say, it's nothing like the commercial. You know what? Let's go back to the commercial. Can I show your people? Could get your employees? Could we see the commercial? This is the way. So I think that the day that I quit worrying about Maxwell and I started worrying about how do I help people, period, in the story, and how can I be authentic and be myself, that was the day everything in my life took off. And it took off because I quit trying to sell me. And I started saying, no, I want you to know I value you. Let's get you where it wants to. Hey, one more quick. I'm known for Enjoy Life Club tapes. I'm known for leadership tapes. I mean, I was the first person that had a tape curriculum where people pay a subscription. After I did it, Hybels did it, Rick Warren did it, Focus on the Family did it, Campus. They were all, I was the first one. Now let me explain something to you. My leadership tapes were pink. Now think about this. I'm a male leadership tape, leader guy. My tapes are pink. Hey, for 11 years, I had the biggest subscription in the world. They're pink. I go to Willow Creek. My good friend Bill Hybels brings them out, and he makes fun of me. It was hysterical. It was hysterical about how could you do pink tapes? I'm on stage, and for the first time, I thought, I think that's the wrong color. Hey, The guy that was in my church that was an IBM guy, I said, go do some leadership. I'm going to do leadership talks, get together. His wife worked for Mary Kay. She picked out the pink. I'm doing 11 years of pink leadership tapes, and hundreds of thousands of people are listening to them, and I'm becoming a mentor, and they're pink. And I didn't even realize it was the wrong color until Bill sat there and said, how can you do leadership with pink? And I said, well, I don't know. Oh my gosh. Who had this? Is this you? Tracy had one of these. Look at this. This was the tape. This is a leadership tape by a male.
Yes.
Now, perfect example, isn't it? It's a perfect example because there's good stuff on this. It was helping people on this. They don't care what the color is. They want help. When are we going to learn? We got one thing to do and only one thing as leaders. Help people, add value to them, find them where they are, value them where they are, and now give them your best. And if we do that, Sean, we're going to help change lives. Pink tapes, purple. I love you having these, Trace. And they're just as ugly as sin. They're just like, and then people, it's also called enjoy with an I. Enjoy with an I. And everybody say, well, now, where did you get that word? Well, I got it really out of John 17, where my joy will be in you and it'll be filled with it's kind of a Christian kind of deal. And I had to explain that for you. If you have to explain your title, it's not a good title, but yet hundreds of thousands of people. Just get good. Could you just get good? Anyway, I had a little fun. Thanks for letting me have a little platform there to go nuts on just get good. But
John, we're so encouraged because
I love this, Tracy.
It's so awesome to hear the story because everyone is emphasizing how things look, branding, colors, websites, but the underlying quality, focusing on excellence and mastery and getting good. This is so encouraging. Well, listen, as we land the plane, I want to just touch on a couple things here, but I want to recommend, obviously we can't get to all of the laws. And so in the show notes, you got to pick up a copy of the 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication. So many very broad, big ideas and tactical tips that will improve everything that you do as a content creator, speaker, entrepreneur. But one of the laws is the law of leverage. And it talks about playing to your strengths. I really would love, John, if you spoke to people that could get discouraged, though, comparing themselves to other creators, other leaders, other communicators. Public speaking is one of the top fears. And somebody listens to somebody that's further on their career, they see them on stage, and right now they're seeing them online. Somebody that's honed their skills for maybe years or even decades, but now they're thinking about starting. So I'm starting a new business. I want to start my speaking career. I want to start a YouTube channel. But man, I'm looking around and what do I have to say? And they're discouraged about where they are. Maybe they can't even see the strengths they have. What would you say to those that are feeling that way?
Well, I really value that question, Sean, because it's very intimidating. It's the exposure of greatness as far as TED Talks and all that stuff today. A person started out, they're just intimidated. It used to be that people didn't know. So wherever you were, whatever it was okay. But today, they're judging you and valuing you by all those stuff. And so I say three things to people that are getting ready to communicate. Number one is be brief. You're not good to talk. You're not good enough for a 30-minute talk. You know what I mean? Some of you would be lucky to do 3 minutes, but you got to be brief. You got to be, hey, one thing communicated well in 5 minutes is better than trying to do 3 things in 30 minutes that are not going to be. So be brief. The second thing is only teach what you have personally experienced that has changed your life. The miracle of transformation doesn't come through what I know. It comes through what I've experienced. Again, I'm a person of faith. A witness is a person that experienced God's life-changing grace in their life. I'm a witness to it. I stand up. It happened to me. If it didn't happen to me, I shouldn't be talking about what it's going to do for you. That's the credibility gap that we have in communication. If it didn't change me, why am I talking to you about having to change you? It has to come through me to go to you. It can't come from me to you. If it comes from me, I may be passing out information to you. If it comes through me, I'm passing out transformation to you. There's a world of difference between those two things. And the third thing is everything you teach, make sure that it's simple enough that people can apply it to their life. don't make them leave you frustrated. So many times I hear people and they've talked about something that maybe was even interesting, but I can't do anything about it. There's nothing, there's no take home for me. There's no application for me. It's, my expression is put the cookies on the lower shelf so everybody can have some. I want everybody to have a cookie. And I want everybody to say, yeah, I can do something with that. Okay, that works for me. If you could do those three things and just be yourself, just be yourself. In fact, I tell people when they start communicating, they need to get up and say, now let me explain something to you. I'm really new at this, and I'm probably not really good. So let me do it. I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to talk to you about one thing that I think will help you. And if it helped you at the end, just raise your hand and tell me it helped you, because if it didn't help you, I probably won't do this anymore. There's something fresh about telling people you're not any good, because one, when they hear you, they're going to know that you're not any good. When the audience knows you're not any good, but you haven't admitted you're not any good, you've created a gap between your people. It happens all the time. I watch it. So just go in and say, in fact, I'd like you to help me. I'm going to do a 5-minute talk on this. I've never done this before. Would you do me a favor? Would you write down anything that I'm doing that could, if I could just change, could you give me any kind of improvement, maybe that would make me do better? Could help me out. The moment you ask people to help you, they become an ally. The moment you ask people to listen to you, they're on the outside. You got to figure, do you want them on the inside? Do you want them on the outside? If you'll do those few things in a world that now has exposure again to TED Talks and all the good stuff, it'll allow you to get started on a ground that you're at least comfortable enough that you can practice it enough to hopefully improve.
John, you've added so much value today, and we're so honored to have you on the podcast. Of course, I want to encourage listeners, you got to pick up a copy of this book or grab it on audiobook, because it will lift your leadership. It'll lift your YouTube channel, lift your content. And I love John because of the depth of where you're coming from. We're not chasing fame or virality or views. We're chasing life transformation and really making an impact on people, which is one of our core values at Think Media. We'll, of course, list all your social media and your books. And perhaps someday we could have you back on for another conversation about your newest book, High Road Leadership. I'm about halfway through, and I think it's such a needed message, especially in a world right now where there's so much division and so much low road leadership and communication that's happening. And so other resources like that will link up in the show notes. John, any parting words or anything that you'd want to our audience to know that they could be a part of to go to another level with you?
Well, I don't have any parting words as far as go to another level with me. I mean, if they want to go on social media, they'll find me. I'm out there, they tell me. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for having me, because you have a really good following, and you have people that are really improving their life because of your investment in them, Sean.
Well, I don't know about you, but I've been getting so many takeaways from this conversation with John Maxwell. And if you actually want to improve your communication game even more, I've got some really cool resources for you. The first is actually a video that I did where I broke down some of my favorite insights from the 16 undeniable laws of communication. I would really encourage you to save that to your watch list or watch that next. We'll link it up in the show notes, and it'll also be the end card on this video. Number two, I mentioned it, but if you haven't picked up a copy of the book or the audiobook of John Maxwell's book, I think it's probably one of the top books that every content creator should read. You know, he really is speaking to a lot of speakers, people that speak on stage, leaders, pastors, salespeople, entrepreneurs. But what's so funny is I was talking with Cannell and our team about how I was like, you know that every pastor is a content creator? Every public speaker is a content creator. I mean, what are they doing? You're crafting a talk, you're crafting the intros, the delivery, you're crafting the points, the content, and you're using all of these laws. And even more so when we jump on video and we jump on podcasts and video podcasts. So I am certain that for just the few dollars that a book costs, it'll be one of the best investments that you make in your career, in your personal development, and in your content creation. So we'll link up John's book in the show notes as well. And specifically, if you want to grow a YouTube channel, I've got one more cool thing for you. Coming up soon, we are doing a free 5-day YouTube challenge. It's all about how to get your first or next 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. What are the best tips and strategies for getting views right now? How can you grow your channel? What's working on YouTube? And what are some of the outdated things that don't work with all the changes that have been happening on YouTube? There's a link in the show notes, or you can go to tube1kchallenge.com to register for this free 5-day event. Every single day, we just do one session. You can either catch it live or just watch the replay. And there's something that we learn. We'll learn a powerful strategy, but then there's going to be something for you to do. It's all about taking action. It's all about actually implementing what we learn and do a little bit of research or actually film a video. And if you've never done that, it's time to get uncomfortable. It's time to get out of your comfort zone. And so more than just listening to this podcast or watching a YouTube video or watching a free online class, that stuff's all cool, but we got to implement what we're learning, because that's how you're going to actually grow your channel. That's how you're actually going to start making money online and building your business. That's how you're going to start getting more leads and really finding a way forward in this very challenging time that we're living in and bizarre economy that we're living in. And so we're excited to be doing this again. It's free. It's 5 days. And no matter where you are in the world, you can link up with us on the limited replays that are also free as well. So if you want to be a part of the tube1kchallenge.com, just go to that URL or hit the link in the show notes. If you got value today, share, like, rate, review, leave a comment if you're on YouTube, and let us know, what did you like best from my conversation with the legend, John Maxwell? And I can't wait to connect with you in a future episode. Until then, my name is Sean Cannell, your guide to building a profitable YouTube channel. And this is the Think Media Podcast. We'll talk soon.